Hello, I wanted to talk about the different Islamic empires in the world and stuff like that. So, you have the original free empires that were founded by the followers or Muhammad himself or the people near him, right? The Rashidun Caliphate, then the Umayyads, then you had the Abbasids. So I'm not really particularly a fan of these Islamic empires because there wasn't really a lot of development going on. Right? Of course, you could say, well, Islam was getting normalized and spread from around the world and stuff. Yeah, but I don't see that's like something that's really that important, right? In terms of science and philosophy getting developed, there was not a lot of that in the early caliphates, right? Moving on from the three original caliphates, the Rashidun, Umayyads, and Abbasids. You have Al-Andalus, right, in Spain when the Arabs and North Africans took Spain, and that empire was it was probably the best empire made by the Arabs or the North Africans or people from that Middle Eastern area. Al-Andalus, that was probably the best, most culturally developed empire that the Arabs had and stuff. And it was alright, but again, in terms of science and philosophy, a little bit lacking, right? Of course, a lot of it, like in the Arab Muslim world, there wasn't really a lot of science and philosophy that was really at the same level of what you had like after the Enlightenment period in Europe, right? You had Ibn Sina and and a bunch of these other people, right? But they were from all the way in Iran and Pakistan, Afghanistan. They weren't really from the Arab world, right? So yeah, I'm not really a massive fan of the Arabic empires made by Arabs and stuff like that, because not a lot of science and philosophy was getting developed. Even the Turkic, there's two, when you talk about the Islamic empires of the world, right? The Islamic empires, they were made by either Arabs, right, or Turks. Yeah, you can subdivide the history of Islamic history into the period where the Arabs were in control of the Middle East and North Africa and other areas near this geography, and the other second period where the Turkic people from Mongolia, Central Asia, they came into the Middle East and they established themselves there and stuff. And you had the Seljuks, the Ottomans, the Mughals, other, in the areas near Afghanistan and Pakistan, dozens of empires created by Turkic people from Central Asia who had connections to Mongolia. And so, Genghis Khan, he conquered a lot of territory, and then his children, they kept carrying that legacy on and stuff. And, the Mughals, Mongol, Babur, the early founders of that type of dynasty, their ancestry was linked to Genghis Khan, so that guy had a massive impact. And his grandchildren, they established so many different empires that inevitably became Islamic, right? Because the Turks, they converted to Islam, and they carried the torch. And in my opinion, I believe that the Islamic empires made by Turks were vastly superior and more efficient and developed. Right? The Ottomans and stuff. A lot of new technology was getting developed in their domain and stuff, and Mughals as well. Although the Mughals couldn't really started to stagnate a little bit. Yeah, but in terms of the Islamic empires, I would have to put the Ottomans and Mughals at the top of any type of list regarding Islamic empires that are kind of following Islam. The leaders, the rulers, the kings, they were practicing Islam. So Islamic empire, Islam was a part of these empires' cultures and stuff. So the Ottomans and Mughals, right, I'll probably put them at the top of any type of ranking list. Ottomans and Mughals, and that's it. Yeah, because there's really not a lot, right, to talk about. We can talk about those various other empires that are in, the Salahuddin, he created a type of empire, but it wasn't really that developed. There was no science and philosophy. It didn't really last that long and stuff, so that's why it's not worth mentioning, right? In Central Asia, dozens of empires were made in Central Asia, Islamic empires, but again, they weren't long lasting. They never developed their own unique identity, so they're not worth mentioning, right? Yeah, so to kind of summarize everything, right? I'm not really a fan of the three early caliphates, the Rashidun, Umayyad, Abbasid. But a lot of people, like from a lot of Muslims, will say, why not? They spread Islam around. That's like the birth of Islam. Muhammad's kind of he inspired those empires and stuff. Yeah, but I don't really. That's not like in terms of science and philosophy and stuff like that, and culture getting developed. There wasn't really a lot of that. Of course, you can say, well, yes, there was. Right? There was philosophy. There was like rationalists. There was theologians. There were artists. They did stuff and they made and built like all of this architecture you can see in Damascus and other areas where the headquarters of these caliphates. Yeah, but still just not doesn't really kind of interest me that much because I just personally don't feel like they were that successful in my opinion. That's why they are short-lived, right? Compared to the Ottomans, right? The Rashidun, that was not a long time. They couldn't last for more than like a couple hundred years. And then I personally really admire the Turkic, Mongol, like the Islamic empires made by people from Central Asia and the Mongolia. It's very, again, going back to Genghis Khan, his descendants converted to Islam, and that's bizarre and interesting, right? And his descendants, some, of course, before, like, there was like a little period of hostility, right? Because, some of Genghis Khan's sons, they kind of killed a lot of people of the Islamic faith. They kind of destroyed, Baghdad, all of these places that used to be headquarters for the Muslim world. They kind of came in and destroyed everything. But, what's bizarre is that some of his grandsons they took on the faith of Islam, and it's kind of weird. It's kind of bizarre, and of course they made it more. They helped in like propagating the Islamic faith. And of course, they made the best Islamic empires, right? The Mughals used to have the highest GDP in the entire world, right? That's kind of when like Mughal India was kind of established. It was like even more wealthy than than all of Europe. Mongol, you can see the connections to like Central Asia and to Genghis Khan. The early founders of the Mughal dynasty, they were Turks and Mongols, or people with like some type of ancestry linked to Genghis Khan, and they created this like a super influential empire. Yeah, but kind of to wrap everything up, right? In my opinion, the best Islamic empires would have to be the Mughal Empire and the Ottomans. Although I kind of lean more towards the Mughals. Right? I don't know. Ottomans didn't, because there isn't like, again, there's not a lot there aren't many empires, Islamic empires that are super successful. Right? Even the early caliphates had a very short lifespan. They were very corrupt and unstable. Right? There was not a lot of science and philosophy getting developed. Right? The Mughals, right? I know that the early Mughal rulers and stuff, they tried to get, Akbar, he was trying to construct laboratories and libraries and stuff. He was trying to get people of knowledge to come together and to kind of discuss things, and he was trying to really get working on that. But of course, he kind of, like the Mughal Empire kind of just fell to pieces, and he's kind of gone now. Ottomans, I'm not really, the Ottomans, the Mughals and Ottomans, again, they're the only Islamic empires that are properly administered, right? Then again, like the Ottomans, they had like succession crisis, right? They had a lot of things that their empires falling wasn't really that great, so to speak. There was tons of like societal problems going on in their empire. The Janissary Corps, right? These military soldiers are like slaves, really, that were taken from like the Balkans. They were kind of trained to be soldiers and stuff. These people, they kind of start to rebel and start to cause a lot of societal problems, right? There was other issues as well, like with the Sultan, they had like this weird type of succession thing where some of the sons and children have to get slaughtered to prevent like some type of conflict and war and whatever. So it's not really that stable, right? But yeah, but still, I don't understand. Like, when we're discussing Islamic empires, right? The Arab caliphates, like, I don't know why Rashidun, Umayyads, Abbasids, these were horrible empires. They didn't leave anything. Of course, you can say, well, they propagated and spread Islam, so they have to be kind of special and stuff like that. But I don't buy that. I don't think that's a good metric to determine whether an empire is great. I believe that the Mughals and Ottomans were far superior and stuff. Of course, you can say, well, still, whatever, right? The first three caliphates established Islam in the Middle East, so they have to be at the top. No, I don't believe that. It's not like that. Of course, there's a great, when you discuss stuff like this, right, there's a great deal of subjectivity, right? that was still right. I believe that the Mughals and Ottomans were probably the best so far. There could be newer types of empires that have Islam incorporated into the culture and stuff. So it doesn't have to be like this, right? This type of listing can change as well and stuff. But then again, Al-Andalus was also interesting, but it was kind of But then again, it lasted like close to around 700, maybe 600 years and stuff. It's a long time. But still, of course, there was a lot of development going on in Al-Andalus. I just don't like the atmosphere and culture. I just really like the Ottomans and Mughals in terms of what they left behind, their cultural legacy and the types of art and music and stuff like that they left behind. I really kind of appreciate Ottoman and Mughal. Those two empires are probably the best Islamic empires in my opinion.